everybody. Good to hear from all of you. Welcome to Unit 4, Lesson 1, starting our 4th unit. We're going faster than any of the other classes I'm currently teaching. So as usual, you're looking for the tasks to complete for U4L1. It should be under assignments or on the Canvas homepage for Human A and P. Today's date is the 13th, so you can just go to that week of the calendar and scroll down. We'll start off by throwing you into breakout rooms to answer a silly question. The question for today, make sure I'm chatted to everybody so you have it for reference. Here it is. What is the weirdest food you've ever eaten? Think about that for 20 seconds and I'll throw you into breakout rooms. Insects, escargot, various parts of squid. Those are all been big hits in my previous classes. So if you've had any interactions with them, go for it. Okay, we'll come back together in 2 minutes. Rooms are open. Homework. Oh, sorry. Wait. All right, kiddos. Molly, what came up in your conversation?
I just talked about, I couldn't really remember the Bryson reading that well, but what I did for my video, which is like memories and how if you see like a fake picture of yourself doing something, you could like falsely remember yourself doing that.
Yeah, I've been reading more and more about how we really can't trust our memories. Even ones that you kind of hold dear might actually be a little bit inaccurate. It's amazing how the brain fills things in. Yeah, and he has crazy experiments about how they tested that, figured that out. Keone, what came up in your conversation?
Yeah, so I talked about the thing I did the homework on, and that was pretty much just like how creatures, or like what I chose, plants could have some semblance of intelligence without like needing a brain or anything.
Nice.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting too to think about how do you define intelligence, like responding to the environment. Like we don't think of plants as having nervous systems, but plants are very hormone based, right? But they definitely respond to their environment, light, things like that. That yes, it's very similar. So great. Gabby, what came up in your conversation?
So what I did was like I think in a part of the Bryson reading it said that our brains can predict like a fifth of a second before, like can predict like the future kind of, and I just kind of looked more into that and see that your eyes move faster than your brain, so to make up that difference your brain like just kind of predicts the future.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff that it does. Also, the idea that there is sort of a time delay between our brains registering of our light. So technically, we're always living in the past, right? You are never fully experiencing the present. You're just like a prediction of it. And also, too, just weird things that it does with your eyes in particular. Like our motion would be so jerky and weird. Your brain kind of smooths it all out. It's all kinds of cool stuff. Anything else anyone wanted to share? Seeing some awesome resources that you all posted, great videos and articles, so I'll look through that more. Please, for the homework, make sure that you have posted a reply to that discussion board and responded to one classmate. I realized I actually didn't make an announcement about the homework. The assignment should have showed up, but I apologize for not getting that announcement out sooner. So welcome to our 4th unit. I'm hoping to focus in on the nervous system. However, it occurred to me that there is another elective being offered that is called Brains and Behavior, which is focused entirely on the nervous system. And so I wanted to do a quick little survey just to see where you guys are. I'm always aware of repetition and I'm hopefully overthinking this, but on the tasks to complete, step number 3, there's a short anonymous survey I'd like you to fill out just about what courses you're currently taking and how you feel about possible repetition with this unit. So I'm going to time for 5 minutes just to get through it, but once I see 11 responses, we'll move on. So 5 minutes to fill out that anonymous survey. Should be super short. Here to my iPad, bear with me for 1 second. All right, can I just get a quick verbal confirmation? Everyone's seeing Nervous System Hall 6.1 on their screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Now, we covered a little bit of this in Science 2 as well last year, so some of you might remember this. What bothers you about this image on the screen here?
It's like a mental trick. I don't know.
Yeah. Everyone see the visual trick that your brain is convinced that this is the bottom, right? So this would be the top, but then notice that the top connects to the bottom again. So it's sort of this little trick of hiding these transitions here, which I think is really interesting. Anyone ever heard of MC Escher? He does all kinds of really cool pencil drawings. So
Yes.
check this out. So here, everyone see the water falling, but then track the water. Flows, flows, flows. And look, it's back at the top again. And so what he's done with this is actually used this little triangle trick twice and hidden it amongst all these columns, which is really cool when you look at just how intricate it all is, plus the background and stuff. But anyway, I love these kinds of visual effects. He's done all kinds of stuff though. These are the famous drawings he's done with the staircases going all different directions, and you see this referenced in movies a lot. But he has tons of other work that you should check out. Very cool use of perspective and tricking your eye, which turns out it's very easy to do. Here's another example, sort of a continuous sphere or circle. What's tricky about that elephant?
I don't know how many legs it has.
Yeah, right. We can't account for the legs, plus the feet don't line up with where the legs are in the body, right? And so it's kind of a simplistic thing, and yet our brain kind of has a hard time dealing with that. And it's not only visual stuff. Again, some of you might have seen this before, but let's just give it a try. This is just a little reading I'd like you to do, and I want you to count the number of times you see the letter F. I'll read it out loud here. Finished flies are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of many years of experts. I think they're referring to fishing flies. All right, let's just shout it out. How many F's do you see?
3. 7.
I heard 3, I heard 7. Anyone else got any counts?
7.
Very good. The correct answer is indeed 7, though most people guess 3, and I guessed 3 when I initially did this. But yeah, there's the 1, 2, and 3 in scientific, right? But what does your brain skip over?
Of.
There are 4 ofs in this sentence. And yet again, we're so used to reading quickly and efficiently, your brain just skips over those. So I just love that our brain is really lazy, or at least tries to find shortcuts wherever it can. Go ahead and try to read this out loud. You can mute yourselves, but it's kind of a fun thing to do. I'm sure some of you have probably seen this before. So what's the trick here? Even though it appears to be totally jumbled letters, what's consistent?
The first and last letter of every word are the same as it would be when it's actually spelled right.
Yep, and all the letters are present, right? They're just scrambled or rearranged. And again, it shows you that, especially when you're speed reading, your brain is more doing just very fast shape recognition for the word, not for the individual letters, and just fills things in. This is why also when people get up and are speed reading in speeches, you sometimes misspeak or put in a random word because your brain just lines things up the wrong way. Anyway, I find stuff like this pretty interesting. So, all right. We're going to get into detail about the nervous system, and there's lots of crazy stuff with action potentials and somatic and autonomic. But if you're ever getting lost in the details, right, if you're ever like not sure entirely what's going on with this system, I want you to come back to this diagram. This is your home base, okay? The nervous system is all about this. It's just about collecting sensory input, delivering it for integration and processing in the central nervous system, and then responding in some way through motor output. That's all this is. So just keep it, every part of the nervous system fits into that general task, right? The whole point is that we see or hear or smell or sense something, our brain figures out how we should respond to it, and then we subsequently respond to it, usually through motion, right, of some kind, whether it's leg movement or eye movement or speaking or whatever. It's all delivered to skeletal muscles. So that's what it's about, right? Input from the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system, and then output from the central nervous system of a signal back through the peripheral nervous system. So I know that's kind of the one weird separation, right? You see peripheral nervous system here, central nervous system here, and I'll break those down in a little bit more detail. But again, if you ever get lost, this is your home base. Always think of the nervous system doing this primary function. So the organization is a little complicated. This is an image from your book, and I have another simpler one on the next slide. But as we said, everything comes to the central nervous system, right? This is pretty much the base. It's not surprisingly the brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is all the other nerves in your body, and they basically go in two different directions. You have what are called afferent, which is your sensory stuff. So that's all the input. So I always want you to think of afferent as input. And then efferent is the output, right? It's commands coming from the central nervous system to other parts of the body, either to release hormones or to move a muscle or something like that. And so there's a variety of different categories, especially for the efferent stuff, right? So, I wrote effort instead of output. My brain is like not working today, right? So output can occur in a number of different sort of channels. And it's sort of obvious when you think about it, right? There's their autonomic nervous system, which is everything that runs automatically. This is the stuff you don't think about, right? Your heart beating, your digestive tract moving food through your intestines. You're not consciously telling your organs to function, right? That would be exhausting to sit there and tell your heart beat, 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 beat. Plus, if you got distracted, then your heart would stop beating, which would not be a good situation. So luckily, all of that is under automatic control. And basically, there's two forms of it. There's excitatory, right? So this is the high alert, the sympathetic nervous system. Again, I just think of that as excitatory. And then parasympathetic, right here is the opposite. Not entirely sure of the origin of these names, sympathetic, parasympathetic, but again, think of that as calm, slow down, relax. Those are the two forms of it, right? So if you start to work out or go for a run, your heart rate will increase through signaling from the sympathetic nervous system, which is all autonomic, unconscious. And then once you stop running, you're coming back down, or you're going to bed and you're falling asleep. That's when your parasympathetic kicks in, calms you down, slows things down. That's all automatic. Somatic is the stuff you're consciously aware of. It's almost entirely your skeletal muscles, right? Moving your hands, moving your legs, moving your fingers is all electrical signals delivered through what are called somatic neurons. So think of these as like neuron pathways, right? These are different wires that run all throughout your body that just are delineated by their overall function. Here's a diagram of the same thing. This kind of shows a little more detail. And I don't know, this one seems more friendly to me in terms of the actual breakdown of the central nervous system compared to everything else being peripheral. And again, you've got that same somatic autonomic, and I'll talk about the reflex arc. We'll do a little kind of experiment with that today. So, all right, central nervous system, just the basics, is exactly what it sounds like. It is your brain and your spine going all the way down. It's actually held separate from most of the other body. You have what's called the blood-brain barrier, which is meant to protect the brain. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But that's where all the integration, right? So this is receiving information, sensory information from your peripheral nervous system and sending out commands through the motor neurons. So the peripheral nervous system is just broken into three parts, but I think of it as the chief ones are the first two, the sensory neurons. That's the input information, right? Carrying sensory information from all your organs, your eyes, your mouth, your nose, your skin, to the brain and spinal cord. That's, again, afferent for input. And then motor neurons are receiving commands from your brain and delivering them to your muscles or whatever else needs to respond. That's efferent or output. And then interneurons are kind of the connectors in between. They do some of the higher level work. You'll find interneurons, I think, as part of sort of the brain too. Now, let's get into a little more detail here. Turns out that it's not just neurons. You have what are called neuroglia, or more commonly referred to as glial cells. And these are images from your textbook that show that there's actually a variety of nervous cells, not just these characteristic neurons. And so the central nervous system, as you can imagine, is pretty complicated, right? The brain and spinal cord are very advanced biological organs. You have what are called astrocytes, which are essentially the protectors. They're pictured right here. They connect the neurons and nervous cells to the blood tissue and help prevent any toxins or anything bad that might be coming from the blood. They protect neurons from that while supplying them with the nutrients they need. Microglia are the cleanup crew. These guys right here, they're going to remove waste, any bacteria that might be trying to attack nervous tissue, any dead cells are often recycled using microglia. The epidermal cells, which is essentially this border right here, they form a layer that protects your brain and your spinal cord, the blood-brain barrier, which essentially removes your brain from the rest of your circulatory system, is composed of those cells. And then the oligodendrocytes. I always want you to associate oligodendrocytes with the central nervous system. They form the myelin sheaths, which is that sort of protective covering that's on neurons. It's a fatty substance that just grows over the axon and protects it. That's made in the central nervous system. They call it white matter. It's the white matter in your brain because of those fatty coverings. Is formed by oligodendrocytes. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing that is because it's different in the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system has what are called Schwann cells, which are still forming the same myelin sheaths, right? Still that same fatty covering, but they're just individual cells that are attached to the axon. So here you can see in this image, there are your oligodendrocytes in the central nervous system. That's the CNS, brain and spinal cord. Down here, this is a peripheral nervous system, so this is either a motor neuron or a sensory neuron, and there you can see the Schwann cells. Again, it's that fatty covering there. It's just a different source to keep separate. And then satellite cells are just there for protection. You can see them right there on the outside of the nucleus of this neuron. So neurons are the chief cells of the nervous system. So this is all sort of, support and additional stuff. But the neurons are the actual wires, right? They are the ones that transmit nervous impulses, or what we call action potentials. And so an action potential always travels this way on a neuron. It goes from what are called the dendrites, which are the receiving end, then travels down this long wire called the axon, which sometimes can be super short and you have multiple ones lined up, or it could just be one long one. You have one axon that goes all the way down the back of your leg to your foot. Very, very long. And then it ends with the dendrites, which for drawing's sake, they usually draw as little branching trees. In reality, there are hundreds, sometimes thousands of these connections, right? Way more than you could ever accurately portray in a picture. And this is kind of where the complexity of the nervous system comes in. And again, we've talked about these myelin sheath. These are these protective cells. If you think about neurons as wires, then the myelin sheaths are like the rubber or the plastic that's on the wire, prevents it from breaking or from a signal escaping and activating something that it shouldn't. So you're going to be making a drawing where you're going to label the different parts of it. So I won't spend too much time on this. We just talked about it. But again, remember, nerve impulses always travel this way from the dendrites, usually picked up from one neuron, transfer through it, then transfer to another neuron, which would be present here. You can see that in this drawing here. So here's a connection from, this is usually called the presynaptic neuron. And then this is called the postsynaptic neuron, where again, the nerve signal as pictured here is traveling this way. And again, you'll draw this and read about it a little bit later tonight. Neurons actually do come in a variety of different structures. You have what are called bipolar neurons, which aren't like, emotionally unstable. It's just that they're usually part of the sensory system. I think these are often in your sensory organs, like your eyes, your nose, that kind of thing. And then unipolar neurons, again, usually make up sensory neurons. These are sending input in. We saw a picture of one of these earlier. They actually have two dendrites, which is kind of interesting. So there's a cell body, but then here are two different dendrites headed out. So they're meant to sort of to deliver information to a variety of different sources. But the more classic neuron, again, is what's called a multipolar neuron. All motor neurons and interneurons have this structure. So this is why you see this is what's most often portrayed in textbooks and things like that. Okay, let's end with a couple more little eye tricks. What do you see?
I see two people.
I see both things. I don't know.
Both things. So you said two people, or what's the other thing that the eye sometimes takes from this image?
The goblet.
Yeah, it's like a little golden goblet. Some people have a hard time really wrapping their minds around it. This one is kind of a classic, obvious one. Here's another one you see a lot, which is a little harder though, I think. What do you see in this one?
I still see both.
Both of them still.
A man playing the saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
then a lady's face.
in a woman's face. Yep. So just to emphasize, here's the man with a very large nose. There's his saxophone there, right? And there's his foot. So that's what some people see. Other people see this is like a woman's silhouetted hair, right? This would be the other half of her face here, and her hairline. Kind of interesting. Anyway, it's just funny how your brain puts things together even with limited information. Okay, here's the question. Are these lines straight or are they bent?
I see bent, but they are straight.
Yeah, so your brain automatically sort of bends them just because it's trying to line up all the squares, but I don't know if I'll be able to do this. If you draw, let me attempt to draw a line right here. You can see that it is actually straight. That was a straight line going all the way through. Pretty cool. Okay, I've got lots of other little eye trick things, but we'll use those for later little lessons. Any questions or comments on that so far? All right, we're gonna play a little online game for you to explore your own reflexes. On the tasks to complete list, this is step number 5, reflex game. You're gonna be using a website called Just Park Reflex Test. This is a website where they claim that by measuring your reflex speed, they can guess your age. However, it's designed for people who are 18 or older, so it might not be that relevant for you if you're a little bit younger, but let's see how accurate it is anyway. I'm gonna time for, let's say 10, let's go with 15 minutes. 15 minutes to see how far into this you can get. I'll keep a track of progress on Canvas, and we'll come back together if it looks like people are finishing up. Let me know if you need help or if you can't get the website to work.